everyone. I am Tiffany Vora. I'm the VP of Innovation Partnerships at Explore Mars, and I have to say I've given some tough talks in my day, but having to follow the whiskey guy is like a whole new level of challenge. So as the VP of Innovation Partnerships, my remit in our nonprofit is to find the technologies, the innovators, and the funders who are making these underlying technologies that we'll be able to harness in order to achieve a sustainable and inclusive human presence on Mars in the 2030s. That is our mission statement. So one of the technologies that we identified was synthetic biology, and I will tell you right now that I am super biased because I am a molecular biologist by training, so I was absolutely delighted to dive into this innovation area. So imagine that I told you about a manufacturing technology that is self-perpetuating, self-copying, self-repairing. It's modular. It's flexible, incredibly flexible, in fact, in terms of its input. It is programmable and reprogrammable. It's incredibly resilient, and it's stable. If you keep it dry and cold, it can stay stable from centuries to millennia. Pretty astonishing. And that technology, of course, is life. So biology has already spent 4 billion years on this planet innovating in this space. The synthetic part is where humans step in to start using the biological principles and the building blocks that we already have in the natural world, but then applying engineering, computer science, genetic engineering, choose your favorite technology in order to drive that forward. Now, to me, what's fascinating is we're seeing an increasing light being shined on synthetic biology and all that it can enable. Last year, President Biden signed an executive order about the US bioeconomy. Synthetic biology is going to be a major underlying technology to drive the future of the American bioeconomy. And of course, we're not the only country that realizes the potential here. There are many countries around the world that either have dedicated bioeconomy strategy documents or have some sort of level of planning saying, hey, this is interesting, we need to get on this. And you'll probably notice that most of these nations also have some sort of space representation in our community. So this reason that this is so exciting, the idea of having a bioeconomy is, of course, it could be circular. It would be a more sustainable, more resilient, bio-based way of achieving, let's say, for example, the UN SDGs, while at the same time driving prosperity and economic development around the world. That is a really, really exciting prospect. But of course, since I'm here at a space meeting, what really excites me is the idea of using synthetic biology as a foundation for a circular bioeconomy off-planet. Again, my bias is towards Mars, but there's no reason, except that it's hard, that we couldn't see these things on the moon, on space stations, and these various types of human habitats. So when my colleagues and I looked at the NASA technology taxonomy areas, we identified 3 in particular that we think synthetic biology will be particularly useful for. Now, of course, there are abiotic solutions in all of these taxonomy areas, but the biological solutions have some really interesting affordances. The first is that because of the flexibility of biology, you don't have to bring everything with you en route. You don't have to predict every single thing you might need. Rather, if you have a library of biological components, you can mix and match and make on demand. One of my favorite examples of that is my colleague Lynn Rothschild from NASA Ames. She's working on an astropharmacy. Don't try to predict ahead of time every medication that you need, but make it so that you can build it when you're up there. So I like to think of that as switching from a take philosophy to a make philosophy. And then the second thing that's really interesting, and I just alluded to it, is this idea of on-demand manufacturing that you could also use to have these closed-loop ISRU or certain closed-loop things within your space station or within your habitat. So that lets us go from a stored mentality to a fresh mentality. And I think you can follow me thinking further in the future when we have long-term or even permanent human settlements, say on Mars. This is going to be a really important aspect because, for example, there are no petrochemicals on Mars. So you've got to have a way of manufacturing all of these things that we're used to without the legacy system that we have here on Earth. So as I mentioned, synthetic biology is taking an engineering approach to the biological components. That works because all life on Earth runs on the same operating system, which is DNA. And because that's a common coding language, you can move things around. You can add modules to make something new like light, or to improve a material that you've already got, or to program in an entirely new function. You do this by moving in these modules of DNA code, or DNA sequences. And so that allows us to use life as a technology, as a manufacturing technology. When we do this in big tanks to produce little molecules, we think of that as precision fermentation. Think of beer or yogurt, but making something a little more exciting than alcohol. We can also break the cells open and only use the cellular machinery of life to make things with biology. This is called cell-free synthetic biology. And then sometimes the living cell itself is the product. Think probiotics, for example. That's a whole cell thing if you were to program those to do something else. So we get a lot of manufacturing flexibility from the biological systems. Where do those DNA modules come from, where you put in the new structures and the new functions? Well, the good answer is everywhere, everywhere in nature. And thanks to super cheap DNA sequencing, we can now access lots and lots of life on Earth and life's innovations at the genetic level. But wait, there's more. AI has also gotten really heavily into the biospace. If you want to talk to me about AI, please, please come see me. I would argue that the best test case we've seen to date of AI has been in biology. So AlphaFold from Google DeepMind, within less than 2 years, went from publishing structure predictions for all known proteins, that's more than 200 million of them, to now they have predictions for every single biomolecule on Earth. That is awesome. But also remember, biology is a set of languages, and so we are also seeing people using large language models to drive biological innovation and to come up with sequences that we've actually never seen on Earth before and may have never evolved. So we have a paper coming out in New Space. If you're interested in more of the technical stuff about this, take a look. We identified 3 breakthrough technologies that we think are going to be very important to this vision. Details, space, we'll talk more because I'm running out of time. But what I want to leave you with is a vision of using synthetic biology to use life as a technology, as a power source, as a manufacturing, as computers, as sensors, in order to make the food, fuel, and fiber that we'll need for that sustainable, resilient human presence off Earth, no matter where we call home. This is how you can stay in touch with me. I am delighted to talk with you more about this, or AI, or any of the innovations that you are working on. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Come on.
Really interesting idea for the circular way of using biology as the make versus take. Are biological factories limited to making biological or organic products?
No, not at all. So one of the first use cases for this was actually making a form of plastic. So bioplastic is a great use case for this. Yep.
Anthony?
Yes, thank you.
Just for the recording.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So thank you so much. This was very interesting. I could ask you the legal question about how is this safe for public health and how do you plan to certify it? But I want to go another direction and go into the sense of what kind of resources will you need to make this in space in terms of energy consumption, technological infrastructure, because it may be better to make it in space, but can we bring with us all the technology and resources in a sustainable way so that then we can use them to make this infrastructure biological? Thank you.
So you need essentially the inputs that you would imagine. So you need water, you need power, you need oxygen, you need the infrastructure, the tanks, for example, to grow these things in. You need refrigeration, freezers. One of the things we identified was bringing that down. And then you also need a processing capability to get out just the product that you need, and then of course the waste management. So the good news is, though, those are all the exact same things that we need for this on Earth. So what we're interested in are what are not the incremental, but what are the transformation steps you need in order to make something that's useful for space also useful for Earth, and vice versa. So it's rowing in the same direction.
Nice. And one follow-up, if I may, it would be really nice to see like a cost assessment of, because you're claiming that this is going to be more sustainable in the sense of saving us money and saving us, to bring everything with us. But it would be good to compare with the cost of bringing all the infrastructure you need to make this happen, so that we can really say this is more sustainable because the number revealed that.
Absolutely, and I don't think anyone on my team believes that we'll see this in the first missions to Mars, for example, but looking at a long-term thing, yes, exactly. And what are you making the comparison to? Bringing it to Earth from between Earth and Mars, that's a long supply chain.
Exactly, yeah, so those things are really interesting. And are you thinking about this for the moon as well, or just for Mars?
We are, yes, we are happy to talk to anyone who wants to do these things. It's just we're called Explore Mars, so Mars is where our heads are at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.